on the workbench we have the parallel boiler Scott class locomotive as modelled by Bachmann. This is an old model in modern terms. The reason I'm saying old, it doesn't have a DCC decoder, and I'm going to try to fit one. So the first thing we have to do is dismantle everything. So we just get the screwdriver and we start removing screws. You might have noticed I've got the service sheet here ready, just in case. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace that screw in there for two reasons. Number one, I hope I won't lose it. And number two, I'm not going to get it mixed up with other bits that come out. Okay, put that one aside. A little bit of foam on there. Take the base off. Pom, pom, pom. Now, to remove the wheels, you might notice the wheels are already falling off. You've just got to persuade this bit of plastic here, which is actually press fitted to the chassis on some spigots. You've just got to gently, very gently, with a screwdriver, persuade this to come off. Now, that has already broken. Somebody else has already done this and broken it. So it shows that you can actually glue it back if all else fails. So we gently persuade them to come off their spigots. There, gently. Already done that side. There we go, there we go. Then off come all the wheels, all in one go. Which leaves us with this chunk of metal and a little bit of polystyrene there, which can do without. Thank you. Now the way this works, we've got two halves which are, there are no pickups on the wheels. So here are the wheels. The wheels are insulated with a nylon axle. So the two wheels are electrically insulated. There are no pickups on the wheels. That's because the contact is via these two chunks of metal, the two halves of the chassis. This is known as the Bachmann split chassis. And there's a gap between and they must never meet. They must stay electrically separate. So we're going to separate the two halves now. That one comes out. There we go. And in between, there you can see where that went through. That's made of plastic. Where that went through to hold the two halves together, there was a nylon bush in between to keep them separated. And here's the motor. the motor gets its contact via a spring there. The motor's out, and there's the spring that connects the motor to this half, and then this half has a spring also. So there we are. I've destroyed it, haven't I? Will it ever go back together again? I don't know. Okay, so I'll try and explain the problem. Conventional DC operation. Here's your track. And here's a loco wheel on this rail, and here's a loco wheel on this rail. This one picks up the negative from the track and it takes it to the motor. This one picks up the positive from the track and that takes it to the motor. And you have your little control button on your controller. You turn it up, the voltage goes up, the motor goes faster. Simple enough. Alright. Now what happens when we convert to DCC? We cut that wire there. We cut that wire there. Ta-da! Then what happens? Where we cut the wire here, there's a black connector on the decoder which goes to there, and a grey connector on the decoder which goes to there, and a red wire that goes to the decoder there, and an orange that goes to the decoder there. This permanently 12 volts, never decreased. The decoder does all the controlling. It gets its messages via the track. Alright, so why am I telling you all this? Well, when you normally get an old model and you fit DCC, as I say, you snip the wire like that and you connect the wire, the 4 ends you've got, to your decoder in the correct way. But there are no wires here on our Bachmann split chassis. Look at that. Not a single wire. That goes, there's our contacts on the motor, and that picks up the contacts from the chassis on those springs I showed you. So what we have to do, we have to remove those springs, isolate those springs from the motor, then we have to get a wire from the motor, each of those 2 contacts on the motor, there'll be 1 wire each, that's 2 wires from the motor, and then we've somehow got to wire up this chunk of metal with another 2 wires. And then we've got to figure out where to put the decoder, because I've been looking very closely at this. You put this together and you put the top on it, and there ain't a whole lot of room inside there. Not at all. Maybe a teeny bit at the front there. But it's going to be a mighty squeeze, so I think it's going to have to go into the tender. Okay, so the first bit of destructive action which I've had to do, just at the back here, I've filed that down a little bit there, and I've drilled a 2mm hole. Say hello, Black & Decker. So the 2mm hole is for an M2 self-tapping screw, and the M2 self-tapping screw is going to hold that in place there. I've also soldered these wires onto the motor. Now you'll know what you're saying, these are both the same colour. Well, it doesn't matter. Just so long as you don't get the rail pickups and the motor pickups mixed up, the others don't really matter. Here we go. There's my self-tapping screw. There, I've fast forwarded to the bitter end. There, we've got a wire attached to each of the chassis halves. So now we can start reassembling. Okay, so I reassembled the loco, and these wires which I showed you, I've taken them through the back there to this little connector, and the other end is going to be on the tender. I'm going to paint the exposed bits with a bit of black just so as they don't draw attention, and then I'm going to attach that underneath there with a little bit of black tack. And that's where the decoder is going to sit. So there's loads of room in there. Could get a sound speaker and all sorts in there, I bet. Not that I intend to do that. There we go. So here we are on the test track, where the decoder goes in. I'm just going to put a blanking plug in there. Okay. Switch on the power. There we go. How about that? Now we've got to put a decoder in and put it on the real track.